Hey guys, it's Haley and welcome to another bookish video. Today I'm going to be sharing my November wrap up with you guys. I hesitated to do this video because I featured so many of the books that I read in November in vlogs that this felt really repetitive, but I did get a lot of questions asking me for a November wrap up and an October wrap up, which I haven't done either. The October stuff will be coming, but for now, I'm going to briefly go over all the books that I read in November because apparently y'all want the tea and you want it all in one place, so here you go. Before we get into the book reviews, I'm gonna do my stats like always. This month, I read a total of 14 books, which was 4,947 pages. And here is the good old mood breakdown, pretty standard, dark, tense, and mysterious. I read mostly fast-paced books this month with a few medium and one slow. Most of the books that I read, in fact, 12 of them, were in between 300 and 500 pages. But I did read 2 that were less than 300 pages. All the books I read this month were fiction, and here is the genre breakdown. At the very tippy top is horror. I usually have thriller next, or thriller at the top and then horror below, but I actually have YA and fantasy up here this month because of the video that I did reading books outside of my comfort zone. And here are the star rating breakdowns of all the 14 reviews that I wrote for these books. I had 1 1-star, 1 2-star, 1 2.5 star, 1 3-star, and 1 3.5 star. Wow. And then I had 3 4 stars, 3 4.5 stars, and 3 5 stars. The way that it's so even is literally crazy to me. But my average rating was a 3.75 out of 5 stars. And here is how I read these pages throughout the months. You can tell that there was a little bit of a slump in the middle of the month and then a slump at the end of the month as well. I've been just feeling really slumpy. It has nothing to do with what I'm reading. It's just like I'm very, very busy in my life. I'm also dealing with health stuff. So I just have a lot of stuff going on and not a lot of time to read, and dedicating time to reading stuff that isn't great doesn't make you want to read anymore, you know what I mean? So now that we're done with stats, let's go ahead and get into the books. I'm gonna go ahead and start with my lowest rated book of the month, and we can work our way up to my highest rated. The 1-star book that I read in November was The Night Stalkers by Christopher Triana and Ryan Harding, and this is a splatterpunk horror novel about 2 rival grocery stores. One is just like a normal grocery store. The other one is full of Satan worshipers, and they decide to literally take out the competition and go on a murder spree. I thought this was just gonna be fun, campy horror. I love splatterpunk. I love extreme gore. But this book did not keep the splatterpunk at the focus of the novel. If it would have been just that content, I think I would have really liked this one. It was just so distracting, the way that, to me, really insensitive and problematic things were focused on throughout the book. Every female character was worth nothing other than her looks, and she was immediately described by her body type and her sexual worth as a woman, without any regard for anything beyond that, which it just makes sense with 2 men writing the book. Like, it's disgusting. And as a female reader, it just really grosses you out knowing that the words that you're reading come from people that have no regard for who you are as a person. There were also really weird comments made about race in this book, gender, sexuality, a few slurs were used. I don't want that. Like, can I please just have a good slasher time with extreme gore without like feeling nasty about the way that the author thinks about other people? This was just so disappointing, especially after reading Gone to See the Riverman last month by Christopher Triana and really loving it. I thought he was going to be a new favorite author of mine, but alas. The 2-star book that I read this month was Cinder by Marissa Meyer, and I won't spend too long on the ones that are included in my Out of My Comfort Zone vlog because you can just go watch the vlog. I will link it above and below, but this is a YA fantasy retelling of Cinderella. that takes place in like a futuristic sci-fi other world. I just don't think I am the right audience for this book. I do not want to read half-baked romance for a YA audience that ends on a cliffhanger and makes me feel like my entire time reading the book was a waste because I didn't even find out what happened at the end. So yeah, I just wasn't the person for this, so I didn't enjoy it, but I don't think it's a bad book. For full thoughts and my entire reading experience, again, just watch the vlog. I gave 2.5 out of 5 stars to Runtime by Catherine Ryan Howard. This is a new release thriller about a woman who is a star of this horror movie, but when she shows up to set to film, she discovers that she's the only woman on the entire set and her life may be at risk. That premise sounds really good, but this ended up just being okay for me. I really didn't feel attached to the characters almost at all. I didn't have any care or regard for them, and I think the plot was a little confused. Like, it was just trying to do too many things, too many subplots. If Catherine Ryan Howard would have just picked 2 or 3, I think it would have worked out a lot better and maybe I would have enjoyed it. There was just a bit of a disconnect for me, but overall, it was an okay thriller. I really go into depth with this one in my new release thriller vlog that I posted in November. So again, I will link that one as well. The 3-star book that I read this month was Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. And I actually really enjoyed this book. The more that I've sat with it and thought about it, I really want to raise my rating to a 4-star. And I know that's unpopular. It's a really unpopular opinion. A lot of people aren't loving this book, but for me, I really liked it. We're following a girl who is returning to her childhood home because her mother is dying, and we know that a tragedy took place in this house when she was younger that involved her father, and it's heavily insinuated on the back in the synopsis and in the first couple chapters that her father was a killer. So I feel safe saying that without it being a spoiler. We are going back through her memories growing up with a father that is a serial killer, and also trying to figure out what is happening now in present day as she's staying in this creepy house and kind of waiting on the last of her family to die. It's a really intense book. It feels like a true crime documentary, at least that's how it felt to me. And then the end takes a hard left into some weird horror territory, which y'all know I love weird horror. I have no problem with speculative elements or a little bit of fantastical suspension of disbelief. So I actually really liked that. And I really liked our main character as well. All of the twists were totally out of left field for me. There's no way I could have guessed it. And I had a very fun time reading this book. I think I rated it 3 stars initially because I was just like, okay, like that was fun, whatever. But the more that I think about it, this one's a thinker. Okay, I see you, Sarah Gailey. I really liked the metaphors that have to do with the stuff at the end, the big twists for family trauma and things like that, the way that trauma is held in a family system. So the more that I think about it, the more that I actually do want to raise my rating. I don't know, I might just do it. Fuck it. Fuck what everybody else thinks. I'm gonna call this a 4-star. Going back to where we were before, the 3.5 star book that I read in the month of November was The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. And this was a super fun and lighthearted romance. It was a second chance romance between a witch and one of her exes who she had previously placed a curse on, who now is coming back into her life. And this was just fun Halloween vibes the entire time. All of the Halloween spooky content was in there. We got talking cats, we got broomsticks, we got pumpkin carvings and fall festivals and costumes. We got it all. But the romance to me did not connect very well. I really loved everything about this book except for the romance. And the fact that this is a romance book, I don't know, that was just a little weird to me. So if the romance would have been there, this would have been an easy 5-star, but that was the point, and it wasn't there. So I landed on 3.5. Next up, let's talk about my 4-star books. First off, we have another book from my Out of My Comfort Zone vlog, and that is Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. And I absolutely love this book. It was definitely an adjustment when I started reading something that's set like in the 1800s. I never read historical stuff like that, and it was a kind of odd adjustment. But I really ended up liking it because of our main character. She was not gonna sit there and be treated like a society lady of the 1800s who couldn't do anything and isn't worth anything. She wants to be a horror girly, and she wants to be an investigator, and she wants to be a freaking coroner. So she does all of that shit, and she ends up working in the coroner's office as the victims of Jack the Ripper are coming in, and she's trying to investigate and find out who Jack the Ripper is. I love a main character like this, but some pieces of the story just didn't connect. The YA romance, meh. The very strong, not like other girls vibes, meh. And the 1800s language, eh. But the actual mystery plot, I had a really fun time with, and I thought I had pegged who the killer was, and I was wrong. So I feel like that definitely deserves some praise. I think if you like YA mystery thrillers, you're gonna like this one a lot. Next up, we have Suburban Hell by Maureen Kilmer, and this was such a fun time. Oh my gosh, this was so good. And this actually got me out of a slump at the beginning of the month. It was the first book that I read in November, and it kicked off my reading month in a great way. We follow a group of suburban women who are christening a she shed where they can have their weekly wine nights, and they pour out a little glass of wine on the place where the she shed's going to be built, and all of a sudden this big puff of smoke comes out and the thunder rumbles, and they're like, oh, that was weird. And then one of them proceeds to be possessed because the ground that they're trying to build their she shed on is not so nice. So we follow all of these women as they try to save their one friend and keep her from possession. It is so wacky, so zany, so campy, and just such a fun time. If you like Grady Hendrix, like Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, you will love this. It's basically that meets My Best Friend's Exorcism. There's no vampires, there's just demonic possession, and I love the tagline, what's a little demonic possession between friends? Like, that captures the book perfectly. If you want something fun with a little bit of a horror twist, this is great. And my last 4-star book of November was Hidden Pictures by Jason Rekulak. And I talked about this book extensively in my new release thriller vlog. So if you want the full tea, all my thoughts on the commentary and the big twist, because I know a lot of people wanted my thoughts on that, I will link that again. Okay, just go watch that. But basically, I just did not take this book too seriously, okay? This book is following a nanny who is actually in recovery from her addiction. And so she's trying to get back on her feet. This nice rich family is like, hey, we'll give you a good, nice salary to watch our kid, and you can stay in our guest house, help you like reintegrate back into society during your recovery. And as she's staying there, she's realizing the kid that she's watching is really sweet, but also makes some creepy ass drawings. And there might be some creepy paranormal stuff going on in the home as well. So she starts to investigate and uncover a lot more than she thought she signed up for when she said she was going to look after a little boy. This plot is so ridiculous. It starts out just like normal rich people drama thriller vibes, and it devolves into just crazy wacky land. All of the layered twists that came at the very end of the book literally had me shook. I was dying. I was laughing out loud as I was reading because it was just so ridiculous, but I enjoyed it. Like, I was very entertained. I don't think we should have any serious discussions about this book, to be quite honest. Like, I just think it's a big joke. Like, this book is not trying to be serious. There's no commentary in this thriller. Okay, there was not a chance this is getting a 5-star from me. But did it keep me entertained? Yes. Was it a really fun time? Yes. Did I ever see any of that coming? No. So, With that being said, if you're a person who's gonna really read into things and take things very, very seriously in every book that you read, probably don't pick this one up. If you're one who can just kind of go with the flow and have fun with things and see like, okay, that was weird, without reading into it and like having it be an attack on your life, I think you would like this book. But again, for full detailed thoughts, please watch the vlog. I don't want any comments about, Hailey, this is so problematic. How can't you see? Okay, I talk about it extensively in the vlog, okay? Okay, so sorry for the change in lighting. The sun literally went down so fast. I hate daylight savings time, but we're gonna continue this wrap up with my 4.5 star rated books. The first of which is Temper by Lane Fargo. This was actually my Pretty Girl Book Club pick for the month of November. My Pretty Girl Book Club is hosted over on Patreon with all the besties, and it is such a fun time. If you want to join, my Patreon is always linked down below. We had such a great time reading Temper this month. There were some very conflicting opinions on it, I will say. About half of us really enjoyed it, the other half did not. But me, I loved it. It wasn't that 100% 5-star feeling, but it was very, very, very close. In this book, we are following Kira, who is an actress, and she has a lot of trauma around men. She's really scared to get to know someone because of all of the abuse and stuff that she's been taken advantage of in the past. So we kind of go through that trauma with her, and we're also following her in the present as she's working with this really manipulative guy in this show that she's in. It takes place in Chicago in the wintry fall time, so it's very atmospheric in that way. And we're dealing with all of these theater people. So if you're a theater nerd like me, a former theater kid, you will totally connect with this. And we watch her as she's dealing with this man who we can tell is taking advantage of her, at least trying to, and she kind of has the illusion of control the entire time. And there's also a mystery element in here as well. We're following another female perspective of another woman who's involved with this same man. And throughout the book, it really just makes you feel how these two main female characters are feeling. And I think it's masterful. I think if a book gives you a level of empathy where you're actually physically feeling the emotions that are coming up for the characters, that is exactly what I want. That is exactly what I'm looking for, and that is a masterful level of writing. However, this book is kind of plotless at times. I don't know that I would call it a thriller because there are not that many twists. We kind of know what's going on the entire time. I just loved the emotional journey that it took me on. The reason why I gave it a 4.5 instead of a 5-star is because I did have just one too many questions at the end of the book. It wasn't an open ending necessarily, but it was very abrupt, and I felt like I didn't get the closure that I needed. And we talked about at book club, is that intentional? And if it is intentional, then how can we knock it for that? But for me, just didn't give me that 5-star feeling. I'm at peace with a 4.5-star rating. My next 4.5-star book is Halloween Slaughter by Sergio Gomez. This was a very highly anticipated book for me. I absolutely loved Camp Slaughter, the first book in this series, and I cannot wait for the third book in the trilogy. I believe it will be the final book because that was already teased at the end of this one. This one was so good though. If you love a slasher, you're gonna love this. It takes place on Halloween, so there were all of the spooky vibes, and it's just about this group of kids in a town who's having a Halloween party in an abandoned house, and they're getting picked off one by one by varias caras, which I love saying that with an accent, who is our villain, and he is this cannibalistic crazy man who just likes to kill and eat people, and he likes to kidnap girls and keep them as little Barbies to play with. He is a terrifying villain, absolutely nuts. I feel like if this series of books was a movie series, he would be like some iconic horror villain like Freddy Krueger and Leatherface and Chucky and all those. Like, to me, this villain is that level because we get to know his backstory and his history so much. Like, we kind of understand what he's going through and why he is the way he is because of the trauma. I also love getting the cultural elements as well with this character. I love that there are pieces of Spanish throughout the book. My fiance, his family is part Colombian and part Mexican, so I will always ask him, like, I would literally be reading and I'm like, what does this mean? And I just love that. I think it adds another layer to the book where, you know, the Spanish in here is not translated. You have to do the work yourself. I kind of like that, and I like learning about all of the different stuff that was in here about this character. Also, I'm trying to look for a specific place so I can show you what I'm talking about. The way that this book is structured is very, very cool as well. There are like different parts of the book and they all have like a different name, and each part starts over at chapter 1. So I never felt like the book was a slog to get through because it's always like, oh, okay, we're at the next part. I'm at chapter 1, da 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 da. It was like this little reset that you got with every part. It was structured well. I love the characters. I love the kills. I love the slashing. Like, it was just really, really great. I did give it a 4.5 and not a 5 because, you know me, I'm picky, and it was a little long for me. I feel like the vibes were great in the first like 30-ish%, but I wish that we would have gotten more kills in there. I feel like in Camp Slaughter, the first book, we had quite a few scenes of just like rando people stumbling across our killer and getting slashed while we followed the main plot of kids, and we didn't get that in this one. So that is something that I really missed out on, and it kind of made me wonder if the plot was going to pick up at any point or not. So that was the only thing that held me back from a 5-star rating. Y'all, when I rate something 5 stars, you can rest assured that it is perfect because I'm being really picky here. I do love this book and I highly recommend it, obviously. Another one that I was very, very picky with this month is The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Ahdieh, and this is a YA fantasy, so not something that I would typically rate highly, but the writing in here was just absolutely gorgeosity. This book follows Shazi and Khalid. Shazi volunteers to be Khalid's bride. So Khalid is this prince and he turns into a monster in the night, and every time he takes a new bride, he ends up eating her, literally killing her by the end of the night. Nobody has ever made it through, and Shazi's like, it's me. Like, don't even try because it's me. It's gonna be me. I'm gonna survive. And she does end up surviving. It is basically a retelling of 1001 Nights. Right? 10,001 Nights? 1001 Nights, one of those nights. And she keeps him at bay. She keeps the monster at bay and keeps herself alive by continuing stories every single night. So he wants to keep her alive to hear the next part of the story the next night. And beyond that, a romance blooms. I also just love Shazi as a character. And again, in this book, I was loving the cultural elements. It takes place in like a fictional place. Like, it's not a real country. I will show you, like, obviously, these are not real countries. This is not a real world map, but it's like Indian culture. Like, they're talking about wearing a sari and eating saffron rice and just like things like that. So I feel like I learned a lot about the cultural elements of this fake society, but it also has like real implications of like Indian culture. So I appreciated that. The thing that held me back with this book, rating it a 4.5 instead of a 5-star, was it did get a little bit info dumpy, okay? I love a good, fluffy, flowery paragraph of writing, but when you're talking about a fictional war, or like fictional geography, or, you know, the history of what happened with this and that king, I don't care. I'm gonna be honest, I was here for the plot of our main character, watching her develop, and also the development of this romance. So I did not care about the info dumpy. And this was a long, long book. It was 400 pages. So 400 pages to me is like, you should have gotten the point across way before then. It just felt like it dragged a little bit during those info dumpy parts, and that's the part that I was picky with, that I'm like, okay, it's not giving me the 5-star feeling. I feel like I have to be completely immersed in a book and lose track of time to give it a 5-star. And that is exactly what happened with the last 3 books that I want to talk to you about. These are going to be all of my 5-star reads from November. First up, we have Living Dead Girl by Elizabeth Scott. And this was a little novella that I just randomly picked up on a whim, and I'm so glad I did. We follow the perspective of a girl who's been kidnapped and kind of has Stockholm syndrome. Like, she's just like accepted that this is her life now, is being this kidnapper's captive. But suddenly, after years and years and years of living as a prisoner, she sees a way out, and we follow her on her journey to get out. And throughout the novella, we're also flashing back to kind of like the memories of when she was first taken. It completely immerses you in like what it's like to be kidnapped. You have this whole range of emotions as you're reading. You absolutely root for our main character so hard. All you want is for her to escape. But it's kind of like a moral dilemma, because she may have to sacrifice another girl in order to get out of the situation. It kept me on the edge of my seat. I was flipping pages like nobody's business. I lost track of time. I was completely immersed. It was so fast-paced, but it did not lose that emotional aspect, and I thought the writing was beautiful, gorgeous. And when I say it has short chapters and it was fast-paced, like, look at how tiny these chapters were. They were just like little vignettes that were like, oh my God, this is crazy, crazy, crazy. And then you'd be stopped at the end and be like, wait, yeah, that was crazy. That was fast-paced, but also like, I need a minute, because the emotional impact of that, I was not prepared. So I haven't heard anyone talk about this book like ever. I think it was published like 10 years ago or something like that. I'm here to revive the hype for Living Dead Girl. It is so good. Obviously, trigger warnings. You have to be able to handle dark stuff. This is all about a young girl being kidnapped by a pedophile man. So know that going in, and be smart. If you can't handle that, don't read it. But if you can, highly recommend. My next 5-star was another one that I featured in the new release thriller vlog that I posted this month, and that is The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson. And I know I included this in a thriller vlog. I would definitely say this is more horror, because it is a retelling of Carrie by Stephen King. And if you know me, you know Carrie is my favorite Stephen King book. I'm obsessed with the story of Carrie. I love Carrie the musical. My best friend actually played Carrie in Carrie the musical, and I went to go see her as Carrie 3 times in a row because I was so obsessed with it. So I already loved that story, but Tiffany D. Jackson's take on this story just expanded it and brought a whole new meaning to the story. Our Carrie character in this book is Maddie, and she is a mixed girl. She is half white and half black, but she's white passing, and she's passed as white her entire life. Like, nobody knows that she's mixed at all until she's exposed one day at school. And then she is viciously bullied from there, and it all culminates on prom night when Maddie cannot take it anymore and she exacts her revenge. I love, love, love the way this story is told. It's not linear, so we're getting pieces of different perspectives of what happened leading up to prom night. And then in alternating chapters, we're also getting pieces of like podcasts and articles and things like that from post-massacre times as people are reflecting on what happened at prom night. So we're getting the aftermath and the lead up at the same time. It's a masterful way to tell the story. And I also loved the commentary in here, especially with like our character who's supposed to be like the Sue equivalent, like the equivalent of Sue. I don't remember her name. Let me see if I can remember. Maybe, I don't know, the character that's supposed to be Sue, like the person who encourages her boyfriend to take Carrie White, the Carrie White character, to prom. She is supposed to be like this ally, like she's kind of trying really hard to do everything right, and she's still getting things wrong. And I loved that commentary. I just think all of the characters were written with such nuance. The commentary was gorgeous. The writing itself was gorgeous. The structure was perfect. Like, no notes. I have no notes at all on this book. To me, it is flawless, and I could not give this any rating other than a 5-star. And finally, the last 5-star book that I have to tell you guys about is also one from that same new release thriller vlog. So if you want full thoughts, go watch it. Again, I know, every book in here was featured in a vlog. That's why I didn't want to do this, but y'all asked for it, so here it is. This last book is Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister, and y'all, I love this book. I feel like this book was made for me. It has everything. The recipe for Hailey to like a thriller is this book, okay? Time travel, it messes with time. Darkness, it brings the gritty, dark content. Moral dilemmas. It has a huge moral dilemma about halfway through the book. And finally, we have like family dynamics, trauma, generational trauma, and the psychology of like, what pieces do you want to carry on? What pieces do you want to leave behind? It was just so good. So basically the plot of this book is that we follow a woman as she witnesses her son commit a murder. She is terrified for him. She's panicking. She doesn't know what to do. She wakes up the next day, and instead of dealing with the aftermath of this murder, it's the day before. And she starts living her life in reverse uncontrollably as time takes her back and back and back. And she believes that she is meant to change her actions that stop the murder from happening. And along the way, she's finding out new pieces of information about her son that complicate the situation and cause her to question everything, basically. We really get close to these characters, and the emotions that I felt for them were so, so deep. And also the twists were crazy. I never saw them coming. This book is so fast-paced, and it just immerses you in this world. Obviously, it takes some appreciation for like magical realism with the whole time travel aspect, but for me, I love that kind of stuff, so it was not a problem. And I pretty much just loved everything about this book. This is another one that I'm like, no notes, pretty perfect book. And that's what it takes to get a 5-star out of me. So that's it for you. All of the 14 books that I read throughout the month of November. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and got a couple good recommendations from it. If you did like this video, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Don't forget to go to therapy and read a book this week, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!